Hello, in the last video, I tried to analyze this photo that I saw in a tweet. I would recommend that you go watch that video if you haven't already. I wanted to see how much detail I could gather from the photograph. And it looked fairly apparent if this was a new moon and this was a new moon that it should more or less follow the analemma. And I wasn't entirely sure on that. And when I went to find out more about this photo, I also found this other one, and both of these were taken by Georgia Hoffer. This one represents the lunar analemma for an entire month, and I had more success with this photograph than I did with the other one. I determined that it was as the analemma would have appeared for August to September of 2019. And as I was wrapping that video up and I was doing a final review, there was something that caught my eye, and here's what it was. When I had looked at the detail of each of the new moons, or I would say probably halfway between the new moon and the next day, I noticed that the detail looked fairly similar. So if I zoom in and I take a look at the detail, you can see that in this one you can see the crescent and a fair bit of detail on the lunar surface for this one. But as for this one, the earth shine on the moon just barely gives it a faint glow, and you can see that it is kind of like a grayish color, and you can see just a little bit of a hint of the direct sunlight being reflected off of this edge of the moon. And it looked very similar to the details that I saw in this one. So here you can see it's a similar grayish color with just a hint of sunlight glinting off the edge of the moon. And this one here, you can kind of see the detail of the moon's surface with more of the reflection of sunlight off of the edge on this one. This is obviously a fairly low resolution image, and I tried to find one that was a little bit higher detail. I just noticed you can see the blocking. According to moon landing deniers, that must mean that this entire image was fake and therefore is not real at all. But I digress. We can clearly see that the different phases of the moon had to be overlaid one on top of the other, and it would have been hard for the photographer to have been able to get back to the exact same spot every single day for a month or possibly more. Depending on the location, the weather may not necessarily cooperate, so it could have have required many months worth of effort, and that's kind of what I thought of in the last video, and I even alluded to it slightly when I looked at the detail of some of these individual days, that it appeared like there were the same images taken and placed for two different days. So it really didn't surprise me at all whenever I saw some of the discrepancies in these photographs that otherwise would not have been present if they had a stationary camera and they were able to take pictures, weather cooperating, at the appropriate time every day for an entire month. In trying to determine where this photograph might have been taken, before I even released the video last week, I also did this, and I was trying to determine the direction of the sun by drawing lines like this between each of the ends of the moon's terminator lines, and then drawing a line at a right angle. So in this case, the sun would have been over in this direction, shining its light like this, or for this one, it would have been like this in this direction. A photograph like this would kind of make sense. If this is the full moon, the moon circles around towards sunrise, circling back around and coming back around the other way the next month for a new full moon. So we could imagine that if it starts off just shortly after sunset, as the evenings progress more and more and more, then as this goes along, this will eventually reach azimuth 180, and then as it keeps going, it will continue to head towards the east until the moon is just leading the sun at sunrise. The way the Analemma would have been photographed, if it could have been, in other words, if there was a stationary camera looking in the same direction and the weather cooperated every single day for an entire month, the way this Analemma could be possible would be to take an image not every 24 hours, but every 24 hours and 53 minutes or thereabouts. I did show this in the last video. This seems to be a different site, but the description for the synodic month wall art said that the position was resumed every 1491 minutes, or in other words, every 24 hours and 51 minutes. So in other words, if the camera is looking in the exact same direction every day and it takes a picture every 24 hours and 51 minutes, and assuming that the weather is cooperating, most of these should be directly stackable to create a composite image like this, with the exception of a few of them when the moon is too close to the sun, and it would have, of course, still been day. Something that I had implemented while I was trying to debug and to find the correct interval rate in order to create the lunar Analemma, I added a debug mode to my Analemma generating code that lets me step ahead, or in this case, step back so many seconds. If I use the default, it will create an Analemma like this that right now looks like a teardrop. The value that I ended up using was 89,460. 89,460 divided by 3,600. 24.85 minus 24 times 60, that is 24 hours 51 minutes, which represents that. That was the default that I had in my app to generate the Analemma, and I was trying different values out, and I noticed that if I take images just a little bit faster than that, such as every 89,000 seconds, which by the way would be 24 hours and 43.3 seconds. So if I just take images a little bit quicker than that, I noticed what happened was that the Analemma started to open up like this and to form a little bit of an S curve like this. And that's what got me thinking that this one here might have been a little bit more stylized representation of that, which would be intended to show what the position of the moon in the sky would be when looking at a period that is slightly off of the moon's synodic period. This one, of course, being the synodic period for the moon. And so in this case, let's say this was a full moon and we were facing south, it could end up being that the moon goes from east to west like this. And I did try playing with some of these other values as well, like lower it a little bit more to 88,000 seconds, and I noticed that it ended up stretching out the analemma more like this. That's about all that I could gather from those two photographs. One of my subscribers did a little bit more investigation and found some rather interesting information. I'll just include that here. And so that's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate the thumbs up, the subscribe, the comment below, all that other good YouTube stuff. And with that, I'm going to see you again in another video soon enough. So bye for now.